He and I have a rhythm and a routine here in our humble home, and that morning he was messing it up. See, he comes in at 7:12 every morning on the nose. I hear his boots hit the floor. I make the coffee. He washes the pasture off of him, and we take our toast to the patio. That's our thing. He's a quiet man, likes the one-word answers, that one, and then he's off to bed. He keeps the herd at night. Oh, how my parents looked at me when I told them that I'd fallen in love with a shepherd boy. But that's a story for another time. Or never. But that morning, there were no boots, only quiet. Quiet like my husband. And before I could get to the front door, it slammed. It was loud. It was different. As if the front door knew something I didn't know. My husband yells for me. He yells for me. Maybe he's hurt. Maybe he's lost the herd. He's out of breath. He's saying my name as he takes my face in his big hands. His eyes, they're full of fear. No, awe. Tears are running down his face, and he can't stop talking, ranting about this bright light that fell out of the sky and angels. Yes, that is what I said, angels, hundreds of them all over the field proclaiming good news. But what did he mean, good news? Now I know my husband, the shepherd, he will never hold the scepter of a king, never sit with dignitaries to solve the world's problems, never even be invited to a meal where he has to wear a suit. But he was given the greatest edict in all the land, all the world, actually, called to the front lines by God himself to proclaim this good news. Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy that will be for all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign unto you that you will find the baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. I can say it in my sleep now. I can see it sometimes too. Glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace among those with whom he is pleased. God was pleased with my husband, the shepherd. His boots hit the floor a little later on these days, and that's okay, because he is telling anyone who will listen the good news.
What was the last thing that came up in your life that you sat there and you're like, I have got to tell everybody about this? Like last week I asked you that question of what fascinates you. Hello. Last week I asked you that question, what fascinates you? What's that thing that you just can't stop thinking about it? Like it's constantly running through your mind. Today I would ask you the question, what excites you? What's that thing that it doesn't just fascinate you, it doesn't just take up your thoughts all the time, but it is so exciting to you that you can't keep it in. What was that last thing for you? I just had a student this morning, I won't mention his name, but I just had a student this morning who's done something that I've experienced many times over the past several years, but he got his driver's permit. And so when he walked in this morning, you know what the first thing he said to me was? Actually, he didn't even say anything. You know what the first thing he did was? Right now he's sitting there and he's not wanting to make eye contact because he knows exactly who I'm talking about. But the first thing he did is he showed me his driver's permit. Now, the first thing I did was take it out of his hand and put it in my pocket, and I love seeing the panicked look on their face as they don't realize that that's not how this works. I can't just take away your permit that easily. But he couldn't wait to get here this morning and to let me know that he'd gotten his driver's permit. Do you remember that feeling, adults in the room, those of you who already have your driver's permit? Do you remember that feeling of when you first could actually legally get behind a wheel? For that matter, do you remember the first time that you illegally got behind a wheel? And you just wanted to tell everybody, but you also knew that you had to be careful about who you told, because if you told the wrong person, you'd be in all kinds of trouble. But you had to tell your friends, like, hey, guess what I got to do? I drove today. Don't tell anybody. But I drove today, and it was awesome. It turns out I'm a really good driver because, I drove in the country across a field where I couldn't hit anything. So I'm a really good driver. I really am. It was bubbling out of you. When was the last time you were that excited about something that you just couldn't keep it in? Picture these shepherds. They're sitting out in the middle of a field. Now, the shepherds would not have been considered people who would get, you heard it in the video, not someone who would be invited to a party. They're not the person that when you're sitting there and you're thinking, who do I want to invite to my really regal ceremony that I have going on? I think I'm going to invite the stinky guy who hasn't bathed in probably a month, who does all sorts of who knows what kind of work while they're out there. I think that's the person that no. The shepherd would be this individual who worked really hard, who spent hours and hours and days out with the animals, which we know animals don't smell like we typically want humans to smell. I've been around humans that smell like animals, but I haven't, gotten to that point where I'm like, you know what I want to smell like? I would love to smell like a sheep right now. Like that would just, no. So these guys, they smelled bad. They probably didn't have the highest educated sounding conversations because they weren't the highest educated people. They were the ones that we would sit there and we'd be like, wow, like what backwoods area did they grow up in? I don't even know how to pronounce half those words they just used because half those words aren't really words that they just used. They don't show up in the English dictionary. Who are these guys? So these guys are sitting out here in a field. And I kind of picture, this is a slow night. Now, it could have been one of those nights where they were already on alert. Because maybe an animal had come by, and so they were thinking, okay, I've got to make sure that I protect the sheep from the bear that's been nearby or the wolf that's been nearby. So maybe they were already on high alert. But I picture this as one of those more sleepy nights that they were dealing with, where the sheep are just kind of out there, and every now and then you hear the which would really make you want to fall asleep, right? I mean, what do we do, or at least what do we tell people to do, when it's time to go to sleep and they can't fall asleep? Yeah, some of you are saying it. We count sheep. So imagine that being your job in the middle of the night. Okay, we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or maybe they were sitting around and they had out their deck of cards. They're playing some solitaire. Just this really short or this really slow night. And all of a sudden, as they're sitting here and they're having this nice, easy night, there is this being that just shows up right in front of them. All of its glory. I imagine, the angel comes and it's glowing at this point. Like, I don't mean glowing like it's, just like a light bulb or anything, but there's just this aura about this angel that's suddenly in front of them on this slow night where it's dark outside. Maybe they've got a fire, maybe not, but it's dark outside, and all of a sudden, here's this angel standing in front of them. Now, what's your response at this point? Whoa, hey, Thaddeus, do you see this? Hey, Bartholomew, look at this. Like, you're all of a sudden, you're terrified. You're like, "Gah!" You notice what the first words are of this angel? Don't be afraid. Yeah, right. Like, I'm sitting out here in the middle of a field, and you just popped up out of nowhere, And all of a sudden, like, you're not this little baby playing a harp that's wearing a diaper or maybe not sitting on a little cloud. Like, you're this fierce-looking warrior angel, and you're standing in front of me, and your first words to me are, "Don't be afraid." Like, no, I'm changing my drawers right now. That's how afraid I am. Fortunately, I'm a shepherd, so I already stink, so you can't tell if I did anything or not. But first words out of their mouth, "Don't be afraid." Okay, what message do you have for me? Like, put yourself in this shepherd's sandals at this point. Don't be afraid, for I bring you news of good joy. Oh, well, I'm ready to hear it now. I'm so glad. Like, I have a very sarcastic personality, so it is really hard for me to read through these stories and not think of all the sarcastic responses that I would have wanted to give. Now, fortunately, I would have been so terrified by this angel who just told me not to be afraid that I wouldn't have been able to get out any of my sarcastic answers, so maybe that would have helped me out a little bit. But eventually, the angel is able to give the message that there's been this baby born, that there's been this incredible event happen, and you are invited to this birth. You are invited to the hospital room. Fortunately, this hospital room really fits your personality because it's outdoors and it's surrounded by animals. But you have been invited to this moment that is obviously an incredible moment because you were sitting here playing solitaire when all of a sudden I appeared out of nowhere. And oh, by the way, I've got this whole choir behind me that's all singing too. So don't be alarmed by the big giant choir of angels that's singing to you in the middle of the night while you're trying to watch your sheep. Also, I'm sure the sheep aren't sitting here going, "Ooh," although sheep are pretty dumb, so they might have been doing that. Who knows? Let's not even talk about how many times Jesus calls us sheep when we think about how smart sheep are. But, so they decide to make this journey in. They go into Bethlehem, and they see this little baby who's lying in this feed trough, and somehow seeing this mom and this dad, and you're sitting here and you're like, I feel like there's a story here. I don't know what it is yet, but I feel like there's some sort of backstory to this baby being here, to this mom and this dad. First off, he doesn't look anything like the dad. But, I don't know, there's got to be some kind of story going on here. So you sit there and you see it, and you realize, just by being in the presence of this baby, and I don't know how it worked, other than the fact that they were visited by this angel in the middle of the night, and that was pretty powerful in and of itself. But they saw this really normal-looking child, and they realized that they were in the presence of a king. There wasn't all the fanfare that's supposed to go on with a king, with the birth of a prince. They didn't have any of that stuff. The wise men, the magi, they weren't there yet with their gold and their frankincense and their myrrh. So they didn't have these expensive gifts sitting around this little baby. What they saw was a child and its mom and dad in a manger where the animals are. And somehow they walked away from that and knew that this was something they had to tell everybody about. And so what they chose to do in that moment was go back to the field and quietly talk about it so that they could make sure that they had their story straight. So that as they told everyone maybe later, no. What they did is they saw this baby and they knew that there was something about this baby. And they went out and they were so excited that they told absolutely everybody that they came in contact with. I mean, I just imagine them walking down the streets. You've got to see what I just saw. You have to witness this baby that I just saw. This baby that I know that someday people are going to sing about how he never cried. You know, no crying he makes. He's away in a manger. But no, let me tell you, this normal baby who was sitting there screaming its head off at one point because Jesus cried. Let's be real. Jesus, we've been having this conversation at home. Jesus pooped. And so we had this, he was a normal baby that they walked around and they had to tell everybody, there's been this child born and this child's going to be the Messiah of everybody. Hey, let me tell you, there's been this child born and he's going to bring peace into this world. There's been this child born and he's going to bring hope for all of us in this world where we are oppressed, in this world where nothing is going right, in this world where we're being told by the government what we have to do and we don't like it, in this world. I'm sorry, let me go back to 2,000 years ago, not to today. This world where things aren't going, does it sound familiar? They had a message that was contrary to everything they were hearing everywhere else, and they couldn't keep it in. They had to tell people about it, and not just in little, however many words you get in a tweet, not just that way. They had to tell people about everything that they had just seen, and when they were told, hey, you're not allowed to talk about that kind of stuff, they said, try and stop me. There's no shepherd's wife in the Bible. We don't read about what they were like when they got home. But I can just imagine what it would have been like when their boots hit the front door of their house, when they finally got off work, and they walked in and they slip off their shoes, maybe not, because they were so excited, and they said, hey, honey, I've got to tell you about something because this was incredible. When was the last time you were that excited about something that you couldn't keep it in? When was the last time you were that excited about the birth of Jesus that you couldn't keep it in from telling people about him? When was the last time your excitement even somewhat compared to what the shepherds would have been feeling in that moment? When it says they went around and they told everyone, and Mary hid all of these things in her heart. When was the last time you found yourself there? What happens to us? You know, there's this, for many of us, not for all of us, it happens different. I'm going to back up just a little bit. I remember sitting in front of several professors at Mid-America Christian University as we went through this thing called candidacy. And they asked me the question, when was your salvation moment? And I looked at them and I said, I don't have a moment. I don't have that breakdown, cry night moment where I all of a sudden recognized that I needed to put my faith in Jesus. What I do have is moment after moment after moment after moment where he reminds me, hey, I'm here and I'm real. And I can point you to this time and I can point you to this time, but I don't have a moment. But I've got those moments in my life where I couldn't not tell people about what I had just experienced, where I couldn't not tell people about what he had just revealed to me. So how do we get from those moments to the point that we begin to maybe even possibly dread the Christmas season? How do we get from those moments where we get to the point where we're just looking for that perfect Christmas story? I saw a friend post on Facebook this week. It's like, wouldn't that be incredible if they would make a movie or somebody would tell a story about something that happened at Christmas time that just brought hope and peace and joy to everybody who experienced it? Wouldn't that be incredible if we could come up with something like that? You know, I look forward to Elf every single year. It's one of my favorite Christmas movies. This year, we introduced our kids to Home Alone for the first time. I look forward to it. I've been waiting for them to be old enough to expose them to Home Alone, and maybe they weren't all there, but we made that choice anyway. Judah might be tying things to paint cans these days. I don't know. But what if the story that I was the most excited about was the one that's been around for over 2,000 years? How do we get from the point where we can't hold it in to the point where we're looking for Hollywood to give us a story at Christmas time that we can get excited to share with other people? I've got two possibilities that have just been running through my head that I'd like to share with you this morning. And one of those possibilities is maybe we've just gotten distracted. Like, we haven't completely forgotten about it, but we've just gotten distracted from this story. Throughout the course of a year, so many different things go on. You know, I'm not even just talking about what's gone on in the United States and the world over the last year and a half, 2 years. I'm just talking about life in general and the things that come along that we begin to look at instead. You know, we get distracted by, well, we've got to go to work every single day. And I'm not saying all of a sudden don't go to work every single day so you can remember the Christmas story, but we get to the point that maybe we're so distracted by work and what happens at work that we forget to pay any attention to Jesus in the first place. Or maybe throughout the course of the year, parents, we get so distracted by all of the things going on in our kids' lives that we forget to pay any attention to what it is that Jesus would like to do in our kids' lives or in our lives. You know, I've got to get them to sports. I've got to get them to school. I've got to get them to whatever extracurricular activity they're in. We had a season there where we had, I think it was 3 different soccer teams and a cross-country team all going on at the same time. And we got that first glimpse into, oh, this is what parents talk about as parenting being just completely nuts. And then I look at families like the Singletons, and I'm like, wow, you guys have a whole basketball team at home. I don't know how you handle this. By the way, Isaac can play some ball. I saw him the other night. But we get distracted by all these things. We can even, and I hesitate to say this because then people will use this as an excuse next time we say that we really could use your help around here. But we can get distracted so much by the church life that we actually forget whose church it is in the first place. Now, that's not me saying volunteer less so that you don't get distracted by it. That's not me saying show up less and don't be around each other as much so that you don't get distracted by it. It's make sure you're paying attention to what this is all about in the first place. The truth is, we can't get to the Christmas time and all of a sudden be like, okay, kids, don't forget Christmas is about Jesus and it's about his birthday. Now open up all the presents that have nothing to do with Jesus. If we're not paying attention to him and not allowing ourselves to get distracted away from him all year long. Church, we can't just flip a switch whenever it is that we feel like now's the time for us to pay attention to Jesus. Is he truly the one that we run everything through, that we process everything through all year long? Or do we wait until Christmas and we wait until Easter and we say, we're going to give you these moments, but the rest of them, let me tell you, man, you don't understand what it's like to live in the 21st century. Jesus, you lived a long time ago when things were a lot easier. You know, when it would take you 3 days to go 100 miles, that was so much easier than it is today when we can get everywhere really fast. Oh, wait, maybe things weren't all easier back then. But at least your life was easier. You didn't have people oppressing. Oh, well, I guess there were those people who tried to kill you all the time. But you didn't have to wonder where you were going to eat. Well, I guess there was that moment where you had 5,000 people that you had to feed, and all you had was some fish and bread. But you were God, so that's not really fair. We can so easily get distracted. And the second possibility that I want to throw out to you is that I think we can just flat out forget. It's not that we're distracted by him. It's not, or away from him. It's not that there's just some other things going on, and every now and then we're like, oh yeah, Jesus, that's right. This is about Jesus. In fact, everything that we're doing is about Jesus in the first place. But we just flat out forget why he came in the first place. Or we can go even further and we can just flat out forget that he existed, period. Because we get so wrapped up in our lives and so wrapped up in this world and so wrapped up in the idea that he would even somewhat be able to comprehend what life could be like in the 21st century that we just forget about him. And we can ask ourselves, like, how in the world could we possibly forget about something so great? In fact, I hear people ask that question. If he's so great, if he's so good, then how come so many people can forget about him? How come so many people can walk away from him? Look at all the good things that we can forget about. You know, we talked a little bit last week about the fascination that you have when you first start dating or you first meet that person that you're going to marry, or that fascination that you have when you first get married. But how many marriages do we see that forget about that? And they move on from that. Oh, you can forget about the good things. Especially the longer you're distracted away from them, you can begin to forget about them altogether. Teenagers, you have a lot of exciting things going on. We talked about, your first chance to get to drive. You're going to have that excitement of when you get out of high school and you're figuring out, okay, here's where I'm going next, and you're going to want to tell everybody about it. But there's going to come a day when they're telling me I'm wrong. But that's pretty normal. Females telling me I'm wrong. What do you know? It's the story of my life at home. It's fine. But there's going to be these things that you're thinking right now, like, this is a moment in my life that I'm never going to forget. And you're going to find yourself 5, 10, 20 years down the road, and you're going to totally forget about that event. Maybe it's your first kiss, and someday you might find yourself married, and you'll remember the first kiss happened, but I don't know that you'll remember how exciting it was. Maybe you will. Maybe some of you are sitting there like, oh no, I remember. For some of you, it was with your spouse, so that's not fair. We can so easily forget the good news. And I think that's a big part of what's happened at Christmas time. That, it's why every year we have to stand up here on platforms like this. We have to go to our homes, and we have to sort of try and tell our kids that this isn't about presents. This is about Jesus, even though they're looking at us and they're going, but is it really? Because I'm not seeing that out of you, Mom and Dad. Like, I hear your words, but I'm not seeing it out of you that Jesus is the most important thing. Because we can so easily forget. And I think part of the reason for that is that we forget that Christmas, that's just a birth. There's a lot of births that go on. But it's actually all about the cross. And we don't connect those things very often. Because at Christmas we're celebrating birth, and at the cross we celebrate death. But that's not really true. Because with the cross we celebrate birth. We celebrate new life. Jesus told us that unless you are born again, there will not be hope, and there will not be peace, and there will not be joy. Unless you are born again, you will not spend eternity with my Father. Unless you are born like I was born 33 years ago when he was talking. See, Christmas, I love Go Fish, which is one of those a cappella groups that I love to listen to around this time of year. Anybody ever hear Go Fish? Anyone? All right, I got one hand. I'll take it. That's all right. You should look them up. Look up their Christmas album. It's a lot of fun. But anyway, they sing a song called It's About the Cross. I remember the first time hearing that, it was like, that's what I've been missing for so long with Christmas. Because I make Christmas all about the birth of another baby. And the birth of babies is exciting, and we should get excited about the birth of babies. Don't get me wrong. The Jacksons are going to have a little one here pretty soon, And we should be excited about that. You guys right now, you're like, yeah, and excited all at the same time. But we should be excited about that. But a lot of babies are born, and so we can so easily clump together this baby that was born 2,000 years ago with all the other babies that have been born. But this baby that was born 2,000 years ago was born with the purpose of going to a cross for you and for me so that we could have hope, so that we could have peace, so that we could have joy, so that we could have eternal life, so that we could have freedom from all of the things that pull us down, so that we could overcome the sins that hold on to our lives, so that we could get past all the things that pull us back in our world that we live in, so that we can live in 2021 and all the things that go on in 2021 and not just make everything about the current events that are going on that really aren't that much worse, if they're even worse than what was going on 2,000 years ago, so that we can live in that moment and say, hey, this is not a hopeless moment. This is not a time to give up. I realize things are hard, and I realize there's discouraging things out there. But this is not hopeless, and let me tell you why it's not hopeless, because I would love to tell you why it's not hopeless. That's what the shepherds were doing. They looked at this baby in the midst of a world that felt completely hopeless. In the midst of a world where there was seemingly no peace. Where the Jewish people that Jesus was born into a heritage of were under the oppression of other people. We love to use that word oppression. We're oppressed people as we sit in our heated sanctuary on a Sunday morning in December, that I realize the pews might not be the most comfortable seats that have ever been invented, but they are padded. So you're at least not going to get a splinter when you stand up. We are so oppressed people to have the freedom to do that. No. They were an oppressed people who were searching for reasons to have hope, and they looked at this baby and they saw a reason for hope. They didn't get it. They didn't understand that he was going to do it through a cross. We have the beauty of hindsight. We have the beauty of looking back and seeing and therefore believing. In fact, Jesus even said something to his disciples one time about how you are blessed because you have seen and therefore believe. But there will be a people someday who will not be able to see and will still believe. Hey, that's us. We get to see the history that has happened. But we can so often forget because we didn't see that baby lying in the manger. And when the shepherds did, they couldn't shut up about it. When the Kansas City Royals won the World Series in like 2014 or 15 or whenever that was, I was probably an obnoxious person to work with. Because my team that had been one of the worst teams for 100 lost seasons over and over and over and over again, all of a sudden I don't know what happened, but we won a World Series and everyone's like, nobody cares about the Royals, dude. Like, I do! And so I told everybody about it. If the Pacers ever figure out how to be good again, like around here, you guys are going to start talking about them. If the Colts can keep things going, but if the Colts can keep, you're going to talk about them. If your favorite band all of a sudden decides they're going to do a concert in Evansville or they're going to do a concert in Vincennes, you're going to talk about it. I've got a nephew right now who can't shut up about the new Spider-Man movie. He is so excited. Like, they're pulling in the multiverse. I'm like, I'm so sick of the multiverse. No, it's awesome. No, it's not. But he won't stop talking about it. What if we were that excited that we can't stop talking about it? And if you're not that excited about it, why aren't you? Have you gotten distracted? Or have you just forgotten? And if that's you and you're distracted, what do you need to do to get rid of the distractions? I get it. I'm a dad with 3 kids, and they're only getting older, which means they're only having more stuff that they have to do all the time. But we as parents have the responsibility of helping our kids not have too many distractions in their lives. And we have to set an example as to what that looks like to not have too many distractions in their lives. So we've made some tough decisions about some things that they're not going to participate in so that they're not going to have too many distractions in their lives. I get the tension that goes on there, but I can't take these things off my plate. Why is it that we can't take those things off of our plate, but we can so easily take Jesus off of our plate? Is it because Jesus is patient and those things aren't? He's not that patient. He's actually told us that we have to follow him and believe in him. Or have you just forgotten? And if you've forgotten, what do you need to do to remember? I've given the answers for years of, well, read your Bible more, pray more. Can I be real with you? I think I've given some really bad advice for a long time. Because for someone who already knows all this and who has forgotten about this, I don't know that saying, hey, do this stuff that you already walked away from, do it more, is going to be the answer for them. It's not going to hurt them, but I don't know that it's going to be the answer for them. What do you need to do to remember him? Do you need to remember that Christmas isn't about a birth, but it's about a cross and an empty tomb? And if you're sitting in here and you're like, hey, I'm not distracted. Hey, I haven't forgotten. I love him, and I'm so excited about him. Then here's what you need to do. Find the distracted people, find the people who have forgotten, and talk their mother-loving ear off. Let them know how excited you are. Stop holding it in. The church has held it in for so long. And then we wonder why we don't have a voice. Because we stopped talking. I'm not saying go out and tell everybody what they're doing wrong. I'm saying tell them what he did right. And don't stop telling people. The shepherds wouldn't shut up. And neither should we. Would you pray with me? God, I apologize for the lack of excitement that has shown up in my life. God, I know that I talk to my kids, and we'll always, I think, talk to our kids about you, but God, I don't know. No, I do know. I know that they haven't always seen you in my actions, and they haven't always seen the excitement in what I do. They hear me say the words, but do they see me live out that excitement? No, they don't. And so, God, I ask for your forgiveness for that this morning. God, as a church, I ask for your forgiveness for that this morning, that we can so easily get distracted away from you or so easily just forget about you altogether, that we forget about the excitement that we're supposed to have. You are our groom. We are your bride. I don't understand how a bride cannot talk about her groom. You don't even compare us husband and wife that have been together forever, but newlyweds. God, I've been around a lot of newlyweds, and they're not quiet about each other like we are about you, like I am about you. God, I pray for that excitement within us to grow. I pray for that fascination that we have to grow back into an excitement that we cannot hold in, that we won't be We won't beat people over the head. That's not what we're talking about here, but that we would just let it out. And our excitement would be so unmistakable that people would say, I would love to be that excited about it. God, I live in Indiana. I've always hated the Colts, but the love that people have for the Colts around here is actually starting to wear off. I pray that our love for you would wear off on people who hate you, because our excitement for you is that contagious. God, we pray this in your name. Amen.